I had to take care of. Anyway, I'm here now. Ow, it just hit my head. Oh. How in the heck did that happen? Hold on. Let's get colorful this time. Okay. We'll go with that one. Hey, Kayla. I'm here now, but you know, I'm trying to get this thing to behave. Okay, that is way too much of you know, the magical flamin' to have active. Way too much magicalness. Too much. We're gonna have to tone that down a little bit. Yeah, that's still a little bit too much. Let's see, where did that little remote go? Hold on. Anyway, while I'm trying to play hide and go controller, tonight's topic of 101ing, or whatever you deem fit, is going to be primarily about the planets in astrology. Now, you're probably thinking, but what about the sun and the moon? The sun is a star and the moon's a satellite. Well, that's when I tell you, well, there's this other term that's called Graha. And that's actually a Vedic Sanskrit word for one who is an embodiment of Vishnu that circles Surya or the sun. So, yeah, don't be giving me that, well, these days, technically, science says is this. Well, I can tell you to go piss it if you like that instead. I don't know where that bloody little remote thing went, so I'm just gonna make this thing stop being rainbowy. Ah, crap. Okay, there. No, don't make it that bright. Okay, here we go. We are oxidizing in our body. Okay. Ethan? Who's Ethan? I'm not sure who Ethan is, so if I helped him out, good. If I didn't, well, I'm new here regarding Ethan and all that, so I might need some understanding who Ethan is. Oh! I mean, I didn't know his name in the first place, so I'm all... Ethan Winters from the Resident Evil? Oh, okay. Like, somehow I helped a guy from Resident Evil? Well, good. Good luck with that vampire woman who is about 8 feet or 9 feet tall. And I mean, I have to say, she does have a classy hat, and I like how she's dressed. She's very elegant, but also... You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I never thought I'd be looking up like this to a woman. Wow. You know, I really look up to you, Miss, I can't even pronounce her name. Lady, do you remember? I can't even pronounce it, but anyway. So, okay. Now, so, the Grahas are planets in astrology. Now, I'm going to go all the way up to Black Moon Lilith, and I'm not going to be going into the asteroids, because for me, as of now, I'm not really grounded and comfortable talking about them, because I haven't really incorporated them in my readings. Black Moon Lilith is the farthest I've gone, technically. And in a way, this can be said for both Western and Vedic astrology. I'm not really sure about if it can be applied with Draconic, because I've never read Draconic. I'm not sure about Babylonian astrology, because I haven't said anything for that one. Greek, I only know Western and Vedic. And funny enough, Western astrology, tropical, actually originated from Vedic. The astrology practiced over in India. Because in Vedic, with tropical placements, that's how they were able to predict the weather. Tropical. As well as, you know, track animals when they have their mating season. Serious. But anyhow, getting into the point. So, I don't like that one. That one smells like minty vodka. So, the planets in astrology. Now, the most important planet, it depends. It varies. Some people think that the sun is the most important. In a way, yes, but also there's another planet that's just as important. It's the moon. Because from the mundane 3D everyday, the moon is the most important because that's your mind, that's your thoughts, that's your emotional response. And that's how you are feeling the most full. And ascendant really doesn't count as a planet because that's just the rising sign. And each planet honestly has its own needed, plays its own role, and all of them are necessary. But the planets that are getting more closer to the sun, those are the ones that are being very more important and more vital. So in a way, in this sequence, first we have the sun, which is also known as Surya. Now, then we have moon, which is Chandra, also known as Chandra or Soma. Then after that, we then go to Mercury. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, Mercury is closer to the sun, but here's the thing. From Earth's perspective, the closest is moon, and then in distance to the sun, we have to then go for the sun. Because the sun's the soul. It's the sense of fulfillment. It's pretty much making you feel, it makes you feel fulfilled. And it has potential to show your potential career, but is also seen as a father figure. Then there's Mercury, then there's Venus, but also Venus is also a very key planet, by the way, more than just your lovey-dovey stuff, way deeper than that. And then there's Mars, and then there's Jupiter, and then there's Saturn. Everybody's like, oh, please don't hit me. And then Uranus, then Neptune, Pluto. But also at the same time, we have to remember this. Black Moon Lilith, how she's like calculated, she's Moon's orbit, but the farthest point from where Earth is. So essentially, how Moon has its orbit, the farthest point of Moon's orbit from Earth's position. And that's pretty dark, because that's also another thing that Black Moon Lilith represents. The unknown, secrecy, deception, occult, as well as how one seduces others. I'll have to check. I'll have to check that for you, and actually I'll have my software open. Actually, my software, I have Vedic software, so I won't be able to pull it. I won't be able to pull it up. But anyway, and we'll get into like dissecting positions after I'm finished talking about each one. But at the very beginning, so we'll go with the sun first. Surya, also known as the sun or the king. So the sun is somebody's sense of fulfillment, is their father figure, is essentially what they feel most fulfilled doing, is what their soul is being, pretty much slam dunked onto earth to do in this life. It's also what makes someone become very egotistical and what someone takes pride in, because the sun is actually, funny enough, it's considered a mild malefic. And when it comes to terming planets as benefic or malefic, anything that brings potential hardship or any kind of negativity or cripples or harms somebody in any way, shape, or form, it's a malefic. And malefics are, as for an example, they are sun, mild malefic. Moon can be a malefic. Mercury can be a malefic. Pretty much every planet can be a malefic, but they have to be, but depending on how the houses are lined up, they can be a functional malefic or natural malefic. Natural malefics always just brings stress. They always challenge you. Good example is Saturn. He's that because he kind of really puts you on higher alert. Like, I don't want to take another step because this old man with big hips is going to hit me in the head. I don't want to take another step. But, I mean, that was much more deeper than just that. And there's also the other part of it, the functional benefic or benefic. Retrograde, that's a bit different. That's a bit different, and depending on what sign that planet's in. I mean, retrograde's another big, huge, unique creature, and I only have a Saturn retrograde. That's the only retrograde I have. But what about the nodes Rahu and Ketu? They're always retrograde. They never go forward. If they were to go forward, there's something wrong. And while I'm thinking about it, Moon and Sun can never retrograde. Same with Lilith. Because to be honest, how are you going to be able to tell the farthest point from Earth's position? No, wait. How can you tell from Moon's orbit the farthest point from Earth? How can we tell that it's going backwards when we can't even see it? That's like, intuitively, I think it's going backwards now because we can't observe it. Then, for a benefic, the natural benefics, they are as follows. The naturals are Mercury, usually, Venus, Moon, but also Moon and Mercury are very touchy. One little minor change, and they like pretty much, what the heck just happened? Something just touched me. Like you can just go, and they freak out. They're that sensitive. Then there's also Jupiter, and Jupiter is actually, ironically, a planet that, no matter if he's malefic to you or an enemy planet to you, no matter what, he always tries to either protect or expand and support. Even if he's like, I just cannot stand you, but I'm going to do my best to protect you. That's just how Jupiter is. But again, depending on the house lineup, he can become a functional malefic, but he'll still protect because he's a natural and he's seen as the great beneficiary, if that makes sense. So then the Sun, usually depending on degree and however the house placements are lined up, usually the Sun, whenever it's placed in a house and sign, usually things related to that house and sign, essentially the Sun makes it a big spotlight on. So for an example, if you have the Sun in your first house, and that's also your head, the first house, I even call it the enlightened position because you have the Sun on your head. So, and the symbol of the Sun behind somebody's head, that's actually a symbol of enlightenment. So essentially, Sun, for an example, in the ascendant or lugna, well, for one, that's also another potential placement of directional strength. But the Sun essentially says, check me out. Come on, look, notice me. Literally, wherever he's placed, he just goes like that and says, check this out. And if he's the lowest degree with a conjunction, every other planet or graha above him, he essentially says, check them out. But if they get too close, they get kind of annoyed because his egotistical self gets a little bit too much for them to handle, so they get considered combust. And combust, in my opinion, it really doesn't hinder. It doesn't really hinder as much, but it kind of, it's pretty much the best say it is that this skill it doesn't reach its full potential, but it does have like the support from the Sun. And if the Sun is actually behind a planet in degrees, the planet that's in front of the Sun, essentially this planet from Earth's position is essentially taking in the Sun, so the soul becomes activated when the planet in the front of it gets its significance activated too. So that degrees and everything like that. Astrology is very complicated, but and they don't tell you about all this like minuscule stuff, but still. So the Sun, simply put, is the father figure, your sense of fulfillment, and potential indication of what your career choice is, something related to the sign it's in, and the house where it's in shows what part of life usually your line of work is, and kind of also shows how your father figure is, for an example. In the Western placement, I have a Libra sun in the 8th house. When it comes to 3 and overlap, you always go by the lowest degree. And there's not ever... And also, the chances of you having one planet be conjunct pinpoint on the same by degree is not very common. And I have one of those placements having, well, except it's not really with a planet. It's with my ascendant and moon. Essentially, here's the ascendant. There's moon, like pretty much point blank. This thing is off by like a fourth of a degree. So yeah. Then I guess we'll just scooch over then to Mercury. No, we'll go over to the moon next. So now moon. Moon, oh boy. Moon is probably the most important planet because that's your mind, your thoughts, your imagination. What makes you feel full is your sense of security. It can also be used to possibly see how the mother figure is. And depending on if it's becoming more full or becoming less full or gone. And when you have, depending on if it's becoming full, empty, waxing, waning, it all plays a part. If you have a no moon, potentially that can show that you have this feeling of not being ever, you have this longing to be full. And no matter what, and when you try to become full with something, you just feel like you're putting in and then nothing's coming out of it. But at the same time, it depends, because if you're having it become this way, like if it's becoming waxing and it's getting bigger, you're more willing to put in more effort and trying to get your sense of security be met when it's in a half, like the first half, like first quarter. It shows that you're actually you're balanced, you're optimistic, but also can be pessimistic at the same time. But not really, I don't want to use the term pessimistic, because with moon, believe it or not, moon is the most lustful. And if you want to take it that way, have at it. Go ahead and just be like, oh, that kind of nasty, huh? Yeah, that's moon. But also moon is the one that's longing for something stable and security, and relies on what's already been done behind her to feel, in order for her to be secure, because past experiences is what moon also has dominion over. But when you have moon being full, that actually shows somebody being actually very content in the house where moon's placed. And when moon starts waning, she kind of becomes more of that, I want this and I'm longing for it. It's more of the 3D, everyday, mundane stuff. While the other way around is being more content and more full and peaceful, if that makes sense. But when it's waning, it shows a more of a desire to have security on the mundane, not security mentally. It wants to have... It even can also show signs if you're in fields of psychology and mental health, because in the dark, when moon's becoming darker, she's actually wanting to figure out, so what is this darkness? Because if you have a moon that's becoming full, like in the sign of Scorpio, moon that's getting more full, she's more, I don't know if I'm going to be really content with this. And then when she's a full moon in Scorpio, potentially you can actually see someone getting a sense of like they're potentially more uneasy and can have potential to be the most influenced by scarier and darker things, and they're a little bit more easier to manipulate. But when moon's going all the way into the dark and she's waning, she's actually like, you know what am I scared of? Give me that flashlight. So where is this stuff in this 8th house? Where is this, scary woozy woo stuff, like, those things from H.P. Lovecraft? Where's Cthulhu? Where is that? Definitely not anti-monster. She's more willing to actually go in and be more fearless. But then again, it depends on the placement. If she's conjunct anything, and it has a lot of factors involved. And also, again, moon cannot go retrograde. Same with the sun. Because if that happened, we would be in deep doo-doo. Like legit doo-doo. So now we're going to scooch back over to Mercury. Now Mercury. So now Mercury is like a chameleon, and he's a neutered planet. And I say he because whenever in doubt of a gender, or like somebody's, you know, sex as an identifying gender, Mercury is neutered because he's able to be interchangeable. Another neutered planet is Saturn and Uranus. Well, because in the Greek myth, well, Kronos, or Saturn, actually, let's just say he kind of besnaked Uranus. Whoops. Somebody played the world's smallest violin for Uranus's sticker fallen. But the reason why Saturn is a neutered planet is because Saturn, representing the elderly and old age, hits everybody. Hey, Donnelly. Oh, alrighty. And Uranus, well, when you get your man piece cut off, you kind of have a nub. So it is what it is. But meh with it. Neptune is a feminine planet. Pluto is a little and he is a masculine one. So, anyway, back to Mercury. Now, as I was saying with Mercury, Mercury is a very changeable planet. He's very adaptable. And by adaptable, meaning that if you put him in any sign, in any house, he is actually able to maintain his curiosity, because Mercury is also a planet that's very curious and very, how am I going to put this? Essentially, the best way I can describe Mercury, think of a young, tweeny playboy guy. Like a young male hoochie hooch. That's not, that's not like overly suggestive, but he's a bit of a like overly flirty and doesn't know when to not, throw pickup lines at people. But he's very sociable. Now that being said, now when Mercury's also the planet that gets drunk the most, going retrograde. I say drunk because it actually was like, oh, that one's drunk, because it's going backwards instead of forward. Mercury can represent younger siblings. It's like the first bit of like the next part of family, such as aunt, uncle, cousin. Mercury is also neighbors, acquaintances, somewhat friends, yeah. It's also your marketers, news anchors, writers, speakers, public speakers. It can also show somebody being a mundane manager, a teacher of everyday education, like stuff you need to learn in order to function in the real world. Not wisdom, that's Jupiter. Mercury wants to pretty much be the one going around all over the place saying, hey everybody, check this out, look what this means. While Jupiter is more, you don't understand, so I can't teach you. Off with you, young one. Mercury just screams at the top of his lungs about it. And when Mercury is conjunct a planet, or if he's with another planet, he pretty much becomes adaptable to that planet. So say, for an example, if you have, I might as well just go with the funniest one. Say if you have Mercury conjunct Saturn. Now, both those planets are friendly to one another. But because Mercury is very adaptable and a chameleon-like, he pretty much just goes like this when he's with Saturn. That's a Saturn, you beat the living heck out of him. And yeah, so Saturn just keeps doing what he's doing, and Mercury just rolls along with it. If there's another planet involved, he takes a step back and cheers them both on, letting them just do their thing. And depending on which planet he's conjunct with, like say for example, if you have Mercury conjunct Mars, or like the Sun, you can kind of see like Mercury becoming a duplicate of that planet. And he actually brings in more of that natural significance, since Mars is like, very masculine. Mercury takes that on himself. Moon does the same thing. Since Moon is so sensitive, you can just simply go, She's that sensitive. And one little change can just completely throw her off kilter. But now, say you have, I should have said this when I was talking about Moon. So you have Moon conjunct another planet. Say, for an example, if you have, like what I do, Saturn and Moon conjunct. Well, she becomes like another Saturn. She takes in that part in the qualities of Saturn. So it's like having two Saturns in your chart. I mean, I'm surviving, I'm handling it well, but then again, my Saturn's also retrograde. So, and he's the lowest. No, he's actually behind Moon by a mere 3 degrees. I'll get into that much later, probably on another video about retrogrades, because each planet behaves its own unique way. Saturn's probably the funniest one. And Mercury is also like I said, your everyday intelligence. Now scooching over to Venus, and now probably everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, Venus, I know which one that is." Yeah, that's like the first, like that's like making a sandwich. That's like the bread level. Like, okay, you got the bread, but you need to add in the most important details about a sandwich. Okay, you got the bread, but you need to add cheese and whatever the heck you're gonna put in this thing, because there are so many deeper layers to Venus than the Monday. Let's see. I don't even know where to start because there's a lot. Venus also in Vedic astrology has the title of guru, and whenever somebody has the title of guru, they have to understand this. Guru does not come from them. They don't call themselves a guru. And the moment that someone calls themselves a guru, they are full of BS. I am a guru. I bet you are, hon. Because guru does not come from the teacher and any of that. No. Guru comes from those who are teaching you, essentially, from the guru's perspective. So your students, they call you guru. You don't call yourself guru, if that makes sense. And that's probably a good reason why usually when people claim themselves to be a guru and they flaunt it like woozy wooey, that doesn't, no. Don't do that. But Venus is, believe it or not, a guru to the demons. You're probably thinking, demons? Well, in Vedic astrology, Venus has the title of guru of the demons. But now here's the thing. In the Vedic texts, there are the devas, the above, the asuras, which are demons, which are people, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, the Rataskars, or the Rakshas, which are the ones that are intentionally destructive, selfish, and they actually cause a lot of damage. So think of those people as like the criminals, and they're just worried about doing what they have to do for themselves, and they have to end lives and cause discord and harm. They'll do it. That is essentially what people should be thinking as, okay, those are the real quote unquote demon ones, the ones that are being intentionally malefic for their own gain. Asuras, they're known as demons, yes, but those are the people that walk the earth. You're one, I'm one. Every human being technically is an Ashura. But the Rakshas, they wear masks to make themselves look like an Ashura. That's how they get in. But still, Venus is a guru to Asuras, the guru to the people. Because Venus ruling the sign of Taurus and Libra, well, to start with Taurus, Venus actually rules your perception to actually understand your senses. Sight is Venus, because Taurus is your face and your sense of feeling, hearing, smelling, tasting, sight. Essentially your five senses. Venus has dominion over that. And one of the things that Venus actually pushes to people is to really enjoy their life. And Venus actually grants wishes, but you have to be specific. Because if you're not specific, the wishes aren't going to be granted the way you want them to. There's a reason why most of the time when you're making a wish, be specific. Even if it's like, even if you have to make a wish that's pages long, but with the thing is, the more precise it is, the more likely it'll be coming out the way you want, and also much faster. Some people have the reverse effect to say, break it down, keep it simple, but when it comes to Venus, if you're going towards any Venus divine, including Lucifer, Aphrodite, Freya, I mean Thor, any divine that has Venus as their planet, be specific. Make it fancy. Use fancy words and say how you want it. Because the last thing Venus wants to do is guess. So you said you just wanted her? Okay. You didn't, but when do you want her? How do you want her? What do you want her to say? You didn't tell me if you wanted it in this life or next life. I'm gonna guess, okay. I'm gonna give you her 30 lifetimes ahead. Is that what you wanted? You didn't tell her when you wanted this desire. And when you don't do that, she has to guess. And I'm saying she because usually we're used to saying Venus is a feminine energy. But when she has to guess, that's when potentially it may not be what you want, and then you get frustrated. Because really, if you tell her exactly how you want it, when you want it, how it's going to be appearing to you, where, and all that, she'll actually be able to understand, oh, okay, I know exactly what you want. Because she doesn't want to give you something and make you upset. She doesn't want to, troll you. She wants to know with all the details for a reason. But also Venus is your sense of conveniency. Believe it or not, Venus is also your vehicles, like car, bicycle. Anything that brings convenience to you, like a refrigerator, air conditioner, heater, anything that is not necessary for you to exist and be alive, but it makes things comfortable, more bearable. And funny enough, Venus is actually an enemy to the sun. Probably thinking, how can one of the gurus be the enemy to the king? Simple. The sun wants the person to suffer based on where he's placed. So for an example, having a sun in Libra, like I do, essentially I need to suffer and pretty much pay back and actually experience issues regarding relationships and stuff like that. Because actually, funny enough, that makes me feel fulfilled. But with Venus now instead, she instead goes about it in like, look, son, if you're going to be doing this to people, I'm going to come in and try and make things more comfortable with them. And joke's on you, at least with my placement, since my son's in Libra, well, the sun Libra, son's pissed off being in Libra because now he doesn't want to negotiate. He wants when he wants it and he wants it now. But Libra being owned by Venus in her natural multigram placement, the placement where they own and feel most at home, Venus is telling Sun, oh, look at you being forced to negotiate. It's not that bad. Just do it, King. Oh, take that crown off. You're not going to be thinking you're going to get what you want always. You have to learn to negotiate. And that's really how it is. And depending on how Venus is placed also influences the sun in my case. It being in Libra. But also Venus, believe it or not, is also the primary one you look at to see how your spouse figure is going to be. When it comes to dating and actually getting to know people, that's more Mercurian because that's the constantly talking and interacting with people and going all over the place kind of a way. And Mercury primarily is the one that starts the dating. Venus is more like the more committed and a little bit more serious love. And you can actually see how somebody's lover is going to be like, now keep in mind, Venus is the primary one you look for love, relationships, and the sorts. Even if it's the same gender love, interest, you still look at Venus. It don't matter. But when you're looking at a woman's chart, you would look towards Venus and Jupiter. But now say, what about a lesbian woman though? Still, you're looking at Venus first. Gay male, Venus first. Transgender, Venus first. Because Venus is the one that has dominion over the love aspect, if that makes sense. And Venus is also another planet that doesn't really. She doesn't like Virgo, the sign of Virgo, because she's being forced to find beauty by criticizing and nitpicking. Venus does not like to nitpick. And for her to express her creativity, she has to make it perfect, which doesn't make sense. How can you perfect something that's your artistic expression? Artistic expression, it is what it is. The way you articulate your way of speaking or expressing yourself by art, music, writing, singing, painting, anything like that, you kind of can't really technically criticize and nitpick it because expression is just expression. It's someone's way of expressing themselves and how they feel. Now, scooching over then next to Mars. Mars is the planet that's not having it. It can show one's way of exerting energy. It's also can be looked at for trying to see about having property or owning land, real estate. But it's also potentially how one, yes. It's also technically the planet that you can see about how somebody goes and, either attacks or the way that they defend themselves. But primarily, like take for an example, we'll put me on the spot again, because why not? I have Mars in Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is pissed off because you're taking a Spartan warrior from 300. Yeah, but imagine the man in the mankini with a spear and a shield. And now you're putting him in the kitchen. And then you're having these housewives all dressed up, ready to make cookies. They all just skip to him and say, "Oh, you can't have that here in the kitchen." "What do you mean I can't have these here?" They take his shield and his spear and his helmet off. And then he's just standing there like, "What are you women doing?" They come back. One of them gives him a cookie sheet. The other one gives him a rolling pin. And another one just plops on top of his head a chef's hat. And they also tie an apron around like his waist. And then after that, they all take a step back. They all join hand in hand. And then they just start skipping in a big circle around him. And they're singing, "Hey brother, pour the wine," or something like that. I can't remember what that song's called. But yeah, they're singing that and they're skipping hand in hand in a circle around him. And Mars is just standing there like, because he's being forced to be motherly, and he's the polar opposite of that. So essentially, Mars is very explosive because he's in a position where he's being forced to be very nurturing in a very motherly way. So essentially, you got somebody's way of defending or attacking something in a very motherly hen-like way. It could be a good and a bad thing. The good thing is that if you have, say for an example, if you have family, congratulations, you probably will snap and overkill someone that comes towards your family to cause harm to them, be it mother, father, family member, cousin, brother, sister, don't matter. You will become a mother hen, and like literally, best put it, you'll be constantly pecking at the aggressor, even to the point where they say stop, but you'll keep pecking at them. And they actually may get a free facelift because after you're finished pecking them, they won't have the same face afterwards. But also, Mars in Cancer can make somebody very, oh my lord, very, very slick and very sly. And the way they also defend themselves is instead of, like being aggressive in terms of physical, they actually swing for the emotions. Like if somebody was to get into a fight with somebody and like try and be verbally very verbal on the attack, like with the Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius Mars. With Cancer, I mean, they'll pretty much say stuff that pretty much is like, that's like, that guy just like took that guy's heart and just literally snapped it in half and then just put it on a shish kebab stick, put it in the fire, and then just blew it in their face. Yeah, broke their heart and crushed it, lit it ablaze, and blew the ashes in their face, like they were mocking them regarding like some kind of very deep emotional trauma or something. That's how pretty harsh and cruel Cancer Mars can be if it gets that agitated. It can represent lustful feelings and wanting to conquer something. It's also brothers, and it's also Mars is an engineer. It's also surgery, medical procedures. It's also the original ruler of the sign of Scorpio. Sudden events. He's also a malefic, natural malefic. Then scooching over to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, I like to call the planet that's like Oprah Winfrey. You get a whale, you get a whale, everybody gets whales. Overly optimistic, overly supportive, and just wants everything to expand and everything be great. Literally, that is Jupiter in a nutshell. Like an Oprah Winfrey planet that gives everything to everybody. Jupiter represents your teachers, your guru figures. He can also represent a financial advisor, one who teaches philosophy, sacred texts, traditional texts, handed down philosophy. He's also the one who speaks on behalf of the divine. So, like a medium, you can see with Jupiter. You can see a spiritualist based on Jupiter's position. But also, Jupiter can represent somebody who is an extremist and being tyrannical about it, as an example. And whenever Jupiter is conjunct a planet, Jupiter pretty much motivates that planet and expands their significance. He also rules Sagittarius and also the sign of Pisces as a secondary. And I'll be getting into like the other rulers once I get to them. I can't really think of anything else for Jupiter, but also Jupiter is also the only planet that can mitigate the north and south nodes, Rahu and Ketu. He's the only planet that can mitigate and kind of calm them down. But Jupiter, even though he can do that with those two, Jupiter cannot at all influence Lilith at all. It won't even happen, because we all know how Lilith is. Oh, look at you. You think you're going to tell me what to do? Rabbi, don't? No. How about you don't, Rabbi? No. Ravina? What are you called again? Ravioli? Wow. Why are you calling yourself something that's that? No. Oh, you're going to say you're going to smite me? Oh, that's like what that guy with the beard said too he would do, but he hasn't done it yet, so I just love it when they think they can, threaten me like that. Just like a fanboy. Believe it or not, yeah. Jupiter and pretty much literally any planet can't really push Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, to really do anything. Because again, as we know, she is one who does as she pleases. And if someone, like say for example, if she's with Jupiter, Jupiter may try to get her under control, but no, it's not going to work. In fact, what Lilith's going to do is actually manipulate Jupiter to push her agenda, if that makes sense. If she's with a planet that she's not friendly with, she'll just straight up say, you know what? You're going to do what I want you to do, but the way I'm going to have you do it is in a way that makes you think you're having power over me. That's how Black Moon Lilith behaves if she's with a planet that she's with or not liking. And I guess the next one after Jupiter, I guess we got Saturn. And that's actually his natural sign. Now, Scorpio. What is Scorpio's background? In terms of like what it represents along those lines? I'll get into that in a second. But just like reiterate. Now I know your name and I'm going to just keep calling you that. Okay, just like what did you mean, Ethan? But now, probably my absolute favorite planet that people look at me and they say, are you a masochist or something? Why the heck do you like this planet? Yes, it's Saturn. Changing my necklace. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that one. Wait a minute. Hold the pigeons. I think if I'm... Perfect. Give me that one. I thought I had another one in there somewhere. Okay. We're good. Okay. I'll get to that. I'll get to that at the end. Oh, it just pulled out one of my eyebrows. Hairs. Ow. Well, need your eyebrows, plucked? Just get yourself a necklace. So now, my fandom planet, and people could always ask me, why the heck do you love him? Well, because I understand him and how he works. So Saturn, everybody's most, oh Lord Lanta. Saturn is he's sometimes thought to be the most malefic. Some people think he's the most malefic. Not really. Because Saturn is your sense of duty, obligation, responsibility. It shows how devoted and committed you are to something. It shows your work ethic, and it shows your moralistic viewpoint. It also represents your elders, the mass population, the unwanted people, the untouchables, those afflicted with a handicap, impairment, be it mental, emotional, physical. It also is your sense of limitation, boundary, and people don't like how, because of him, my life is bad. Not really. Because of you, your life's bad. Because depending on where he transits, in the transit, when he transits over and he steps into a new house, if you have neglected the house, it'll just give you the results of it, be it good or bad. That's what he's supposed to do. If you work your tushy off for something, and when he steps into the house related to that, he'll actually reward you with it by pretty much matching the effort you put out towards it. He'll match the results back to you. The best way to put it is I'll say it this way. When it comes to being rewarded with something, Saturn outdoes Jupiter. And Jupiter likes handing out stuff, while Saturn wants you to suffer for it, essentially, and work for it and to prove it. And if you do that, it may take some time, but Saturn will actually, instead of, handing you a little bag of gold, he'll actually get into a dump truck, pull it backwards, and then dump pretty much every little gold piece you can fit in that dump truck onto you. But you have to pretty much put out the effort for it. Because one of the key words with Saturn is assurity. He assures you'll get what you put out back to you and more. But if you don't, he's not really going to care if it's you pretty much have to suffer for it. Like say he's transiting your 4th house and you neglected your mother because 4th house is mother. Saturn transit, he may actually have something happen that involves your mother's health deteriorating. And they're going to be like, why are you doing this, Saturn? Why are you trolling me? Well, you weren't listening to her. Now she's on her deathbed. Idiot. Because now he's forcing you to give it attention. But if you pretty much were like mama's boy and you were always there for her and talked and pretty much helped her through everything that she needed, and if you went above and beyond for her, he'll actually reward you by giving potentially 4th house's property. He actually may reward you in a way that kind of helps build your property up and real estate up. and also make you feel more secure, like with financial health and luxury and contentment and a mental peace. That's what he can do. And I mean, I can vouch for that because when he transited my ascendant February on the 26th, oh, look at this, a wish? Look at that. I got my wish that I wanted for years, and Saturn just gave it to me. Like, I'm not even kidding. I even posted, like, that awkward moment when you're like, right when Saturn touches my ascendant degree, I just know he's going to give me something I want. There's your desire, kid. No, get backs. Literally, that's what happened. And instead of looking at Saturn as a planet that trolls you, instead look at it as a planet that actually wants you to be well prepared for everything. That's why, since he's known as being pessimistic, in reality, he's actually trying to make sure that you know and have plans for every little possible negative thing that can happen to you. He wants you to be prepared. He's not going, wait! Did you think of this? You don't want to be going to LA because you might get, fan hooched at. Oh, okay. You're going to have, pepper spray. Good. What about this one? Whatever those magical men are called. Yeah, the ones that go, okay. Okay, you're going to be like, oh, okay. You're going to be like a Republican. Okay, got it. He wants you to make sure you know and you're prepared and you have a plan for wherever you're going. Because he's not bringing up these situations of being pessimistic just to mess with you. He's making sure you have plans set up and you have a idea of how you're going to handle situations. And believe it or not, Saturn represents the foundation of everything because he's technically the oldest planet in Vedic astrology. He's the oldest one and essentially technically the last one in the Vedic astrology system. And back many, 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 many moons ago, we're talking thousands of years, the original birth charts and the way they were drawn, it was actually like this. You have the sun here, then you have all the other planets all the way up to Saturn, which is at the very end, and there's the planet part of it. Like the inner part of Saturn is right there. Then the rings, they actually go all the way around, kind of like over the top, kind of like, yeah. And everything was within Saturn's grasp because the rings just came across like that. That's how it was originally drawn. And then up until when we started expanding outward and actually was able to explore the confinements of space, that's when we saw Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and the asteroids, and many more other things that we've discovered so far. And that was actually breaking Saturn's hold. And then when we go beyond Saturn, now we're at Uranus. And now the outermost planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, not really Lilith, because she's actually, believe it or not, close with Earth to Moon. Uranus, how do I put this? The best way I can describe Uranus is like, think of a jester. Like a random jester that is so unpredictable that he may actually, he likes being unique, whimsical, and wants somebody to just let themselves go and just be their unique self. But also at the same time, he can pull the rug out from underneath you. He's unpredictable, and another good way to think about it is think of a family member that every time when they come to the family gathering, they never dress for the occasion. They may one time, but the next time with the family gathering, they look like a Lady Gaga reject. Like, how come you look like you're wearing a meat dress? What? What do you mean? What you got a problem with my meat dress? Then the next time they come, they actually look like, for some reason they're wearing an outfit that makes them look like a black widow spider. Thank you for that. What's that called? Miss PS Pro? Or yeah. And I honestly have to say, I have to thank my mentor Russell, and it's actually getting pretty close to his the day when he passed 2 years ago. So I had to give him all the credit because he was actually the one who kind of helped refine all that I knew that I know now. So yeah, I mean, give him all the credit, not me. And I'm pretty much just regurgitating all that he put in my head. And Uranus, to best put it, is also one of the planets you can look for like the collective standpoint and viewpoint, and also is a planet that also is very rebellious, like Saturn. Saturn's also rebellious, naturally owning Aquarius. Saturn, Uranus, both own Aquarius, and I'll get to Rahu and Ketu after Pluto because they're just as important. But Uranus, pretty much whatever gets pushed. Like say for example, if somebody is pushing for animal rights, even though he's for progression and and like moving things along, if some if there's a force or there's something being made bandwagon and pushed, Uranus rebels against it. Say for example, like if Uranus is pushing for animal rights and then the whole society then pushes for animal rights, he'll just go, why can't you guys push your own agenda? Then he now rebels against it. That's how that's just how he works. He wants to be doing his own thing. And he despises bandwagons. Because he thinks, oh, you gotta do what I wanna do? Nope, I don't want it anymore. Nope. I don't wanna do animal rights anymore. Everybody deserves bacon. But you were just saying you wanted animal rights. Bacon! That random too. He's very unpredictable. And I'll give one thing about retrogression. When Uranus is retrograde, and retrogression happens when the planet's a bit closer to Earth and it appears to be going backwards. But with Uranus, naturally he's unpredictable. Now he kind of gives you a bit of a warning, like, okay, I'm gonna do this next, but just make sure you're prepared, but he won't tell you when it's gonna come. So be prepared to have kind of a predictable upset happen, depending on the house and where he's transiting. But where Uranus is placed, that's where you can see somebody's way of rebelling against something, and where Uranus is aspecting by 180 degree. That's kind of like the agenda that they want to push for. Now Neptune, or it can be Pluto, depending on where these two are. Because sometimes Pluto decides, you know what, I'm not going to be the last one. Get out of my way, Neptune. But it just depends, because sometimes they can interchange, depending. But that takes quite a while for that to happen. But it happens. But usually it's Neptune. Now Neptune is a feminine planet. Essentially, think of Neptune as like your seer with a crystal ball that wants to woozy woo you and tell you these magical woozy things and try and make you get into fantasy woozy woo land and make you feel like, just relax, look into the ball. I will give you the future, but you must close your eyes and just relax. Kind of like making you be succumb to illusion, deception. And Neptune also represents, funny enough, intoxication. But intoxication does not mean, being under the influence of alcohol, a substance, or anything along those lines that's potentially harmful. Intoxication can be something as simple as when you're intoxicated, and how you be intoxicated is you're intaking something that's outside of you inwardly, and then it changes your perspective. I say, for an example, if I'm not awake, actually, here's a really good example. Being asthmatic, I'm having asthma trouble. This has caffeine in it, and caffeine pretty much helps the blood flow faster, and it helps combat asthmatic symptoms. So having a sip of the Coke, when you actually intake it, Now you're being intoxicated by the Coke, which part of it helps your blood flow, and it helps because of the caffeine. So being intoxicated by a Coke, I'm no longer going, I'm now, okay. And that's being intoxicated. Your perspective of life changes. It goes from like, oh, I'm gonna, to, okay, I can breathe again. Because the body's being able to keep up with it. But same thing with the reverse. If you have a few drinks, you go from like, okay, yeah, I'm alert. What? I'm not drunk, officer. Are those fuzzy cuffs? I knew you guys. I knew you guys like handling balls like that. That's another intoxication, but it's the reverse. Anatomy for, well, that depends. Anatomy of a human or anatomy of a organism, or like an animal or a species of animal. Because if it's a human anatomy, it depends. How are we going with the anatomy? Are we going with anatomy to teach, or health, or wellness, or surgery, or human anatomy? Well, if it's going to be more along the lines of teaching, it would be Jupiter and Mercury, because they both can do that. But for like the medical field, you can most definitely see it as Mercury and Jupiter again. But for like health and wellness for the physical body, that would be Mars, because Mars rules the ascendant, which is the physical body, the natural house of Aries. So it can be any of those ones for that matter. But specifically Virgo rules that's gonna sound so weird. It actually rules the concept of health, wellness, because Virgo is the sign that likes to combat impurities and toxins. Retrograde, Uranus in the 7th. So that could most definitely show. Oh man, I just have it in my head. Essentially, when it comes to other people, you can kind of pick up on their BS, and when they think that they're being slick, you're like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're kind of telegraphing it. You ain't slick. And also, people become kind of predictable to you. You're like, I already know what this one's gonna do. Give it 2 seconds, he's gonna stand on his head. 3, 2, oh look at that. He already is on his head. But now he won't come back down. Now he's stuck there. Midhaven, usually that's like essentially the 10th house. Neptune, I saw the Neptune, but Midhaven is essentially, it's like a degree point. It's not really a planet. It's just like the ascendant. It's just a degree point. And that's usually like the work profession and standing in society. That's like the regular 10th house-ish. And I use equal house placements, so everything's 30 degrees long. But Midhaven is pretty common with like Platypus, I believe, as well as what else? Most astrology on the Western does not have that. Hey, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a reason why intoxication leads to it actually opens doors. It's like a gateway opener. Keep that down in your mind. It's true. And Neptune also co-rules the sign of Pisces alongside Jupiter. And whenever Neptune's conjunct a planet, Neptune kind of woozy-woos that planet. Like, say for example, I have Uranus and Neptune together in Capricorn. So essentially, Uranus is trying to be unpredictable with Neptune, but since Neptune's on the lowest degree by a smidge, Neptune's just all like, clown, just why don't you try and find a more alluring way to tell your jokes? You dropped something. What did I drop? My jaw. Oh, that was inappropriate. Oh, well, it was funny. See, that influence kind of takes a hold of planet which one's the lowest degree, because they're the one that's saying how the energy is going to come out. And the planet behind them has to pretty much abide and kind of go through, and, like a filter, their significance. But at the same time, the planet that's in the lowest degree, it's being hit in the back by the planet or planets behind it. So say, let's put it this way. Black Moon, for me, Black Moon, Lilith, Saturn, and Moon, and Ascendant. But that's not a planet. So in the far back, we have Lilith. Then we have Saturn. Lilith, and even though also Moon is in the same house, Lilith behaves differently when she's in the same house as Moon. Lilith's significance goes through Saturn. Now, Lilith and Saturn, they're friendly to each other. But because since Moon's in front of Saturn, and naturally Saturn and Moon are not fond of one another, but usually it's Saturn that doesn't want to put up with Moon. So Lilith puts her significance much harder, because what makes Lilith exist, Moon, is pretty much being affected by Saturn. And Lilith is naturally protective of the Moon, so what she significates hits Saturn, thus, and then Saturn pushes that into Moon, and Moon gets a good to the back because Saturn's retrograde, and that does influence it. So Moon embodies all of that, and now she begins pushing that out. And Moon's a planet that doesn't know how to push out anything. She only knows how to take. Like, she's 100% receptive. So whatever she's being influenced by, she takes it all in and then expresses it. But not to other planets. She just becomes like a sponge of all that, and then after when she's taken pretty much everything, she then pushes it outward with like the emotions and such and the thoughts. I think I got everything with Neptune. But now Pluto. Now Pluto, oh boy. Pluto is a little shit. To best describe Pluto. I even had to take some hits off my inhaler in order to get ready for Pluto. To explain Pluto, this is the best I can put it. Imagine if you have a younger sibling, like a much younger sibling. Believe it or not, based on Moon's position, Lilith gets influenced by Moon's position, because Moon is what Lilith relies on to exist. So if Moon is, it doesn't really matter in what degree, where's Moon's place. Wherever Moon is at, Lilith gets influenced by it. Because since she's Moon's orbit, the farthest point, it influences Lilith. But now say for an example, you have, let's see here. If you have let's put, now we'll just go with that. Mars and Moon together, and then Lilith is somewhere off on her own. Lilith does take in some of that Mars aggression into her. So you can kind of see that Lilith can be a little bit more pushy and a little bit more, how do I put this? Depending on like the sign too, because that also influences it. But say if you have Moon and Mars in Scorpio, and then Lilith is like, say, in, let's go with the crazy one, Aries, where she's like in her exaltation point. Essentially now you have Lilith going from being influenced by Mars and Moon and Scorpio, which she also rules. So the way that she carries out acts of vengeance is that she now takes initiative to actually take more physical action into kind of doing stuff that's kind of a sudden strike, because that's Scorpio. But say for example, if you needed someone to be a really good this is gonna sound so bad, but I mean this is like how we gotta piece it together sometimes. If you need someone to cripple somebody quick, swiftly, and just out of nowhere without them even knowing it, like for example, putting a penny in somebody's gas tank, having somebody with a Lilith in Aries with a Mars and Moon in Scorpio, there's your person, because they'll take the initiative to get vengeance quickly and suddenly. That's like how you got to piece it together. It can get kind of crazy just looking how the things are placed in what house and all that. It can get pretty nuts. But now Pluto. like I said, Pluto's a little, the best way I can describe. Pluto is like that younger sibling, like when you were a kid and you had your baby brother, baby sister, and no matter what you did, they always wanted to hang out with you. They always wanted to be with you and your friends, and they always wanted to impress you. But now this one time that you and your friends are trying to do something that you got to be very careful with, like for example, skateboarding. Because Pluto thinks he can do exactly what anybody else does, but better. But here comes the issue. Let's say you're riding the skateboard, going up a ramp, and then coming back down. Okay. Pluto decides to try and get attention and be like, hey guys, I can do that too. And then everybody says, Pluto, please don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. And he doesn't listen, gets on the skateboard, goes up the ramp, comes flying off the skateboard and goes cranium first onto the ground and then just falls backwards. So then he starts screaming and yelling in pain, and then everybody's yelling, oh God, great. Somebody get his mom. And now you, being his older sibling, have to go get mom and explain what happened, and everything becomes a catastrophic hot mess. To essentially, Pluto overkills wherever he's sitting and transforms it into something quite catastrophically. And whichever planet he's sitting with, excluding Lilith, essentially that planet's significance gets overkilled. Essentially, meaning that it just gets over. Pretty much its significance gets way overblown. Somewhat similar to Rahu, but Rahu makes it kind of like very addictive. Pluto, it just goes with it. And Pluto can be a very difficult planet to really understand, but the best way that I can put it is that it's intense and way too much. And usually another good way to look at it, it's like Pluto is the planet that's the runt. Hey, Munchin. Yes, even by the lowest degree. If you have Pluto with the lowest degree, all the other planets are now pretty much throwing their significance right through Pluto, and now he's overblowing it. Same if it's backwards. If you have, worst case scenario, you have Moon by the lowest degree, and then you have Pluto behind her. His significance of overkilling hits Moon, and Moon gets overkill with the emotions based on the sign in the house. So that gets the best way to look at it. It's like one planet with Pluto, the other planet's like, oh God, I gotta put up with a runt. Why? No, I don't want to deal with a runt. Hey, here's a good example. So that well, I'll have to really think about that one because that one might be a little complex, but I'll figure it out while I'm explaining something. So essentially, say if you have Saturn and Pluto conjunct, well, you now have the runt trying to tell Saturn that he can do it just like him. Hey Saturn, what do you want, runt? I bet you I could be an old cranky old man like you. What? No, bad. Go over there and get in the corner. You're not going to tell me what to do, old geezer. F you, man. What? Out. Damn bastard, get to the corner. Yeah, because Saturn's significance gets overkilled and overblown and destructive like that because he's getting more agitated. Literally, that's what happens when Pluto comes in conjunct with any planet except Lilith. Now we'll go to Rahu next. Rahu is the north node of the moon, and that's also where you can see somebody's what they are going towards, and they're actually more likely addictive towards. It also shows where whenever they come into contact, based on the sign and placement, or even planet, they become like fixated and they can't get enough of where it's placed. So for an example, say if you have Rahu in Leo. Precise. So if you have Rahu in Leo, essentially you have somebody wanting to be noticed all the time, and that's actually one of the potential placements of seeing if somebody's narcissical. Rahu in Leo But then again, it depends if Jupiter is aspecting Rahu, or even if Sun is in Leo as well, but not close to Rahu, because Sun can actually hold his house and protect his house. So depending on the placements, you have to look at everything. You can't just look at one placement like Rahu and Leo and be like, oh, that person's a narcissist. No, you have to look at pretty much everything. Because that's just not one thing you can look at. Rahu is also the way that somebody carries themselves and it is against the norm. Rahu also represents viruses and infections, and it's essentially known as the conquering army. In Vedic texts, Rahu exactly, because actually I was just about to say that, and you just took it out of my head. Rahu is like Pac-Man, you know, the yellow thing that goes wah, 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 and being chased by ghosts. Yeah. So essentially, yeah. Pac-Man just keeps nomming on everything. Nom, 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 and doesn't know how to stop. Because he doesn't have a stomach to understand, I'm full. Nope, he just keeps nomming on everything. And is also where someone can't get enough of. And then now we have the 180 degree opposite of that, which is the South Node, or K2. Essentially, K2 is just as, pretty much the same as Rahu in a way, but K2 is the other side of the coin. Where Rahu is like, give me this, no, 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 no. K2 instead is like, meh with it. I have to? Do I really have to? Meh. Meh. With it. It's detached from it. It's like, I don't really care about this, but fine. I guess I'll just hold this in meditation, even though I've done this last live already. I'm so bored of this. He's really detached and doesn't really give a lot of concern towards it, because he's kind of redirecting you where Rahu's at. But also, now with Rahu and Ketu, another little thing about them. If they're within a pretty close degree to another planet, except Jupiter, because Jupiter tries to mitigate them both, Rahu and Ketu can possess a planet. Meaning, like, for example, say if you have Rahu with Moon, somebody's lustful and way of like longing for something gets overblown, and pretty much they become very lustful, and they can become pretty animalistic trying to get something, because that's blinding them. And another one, K2 with Moon, I have to say it, and I've seen it before. Moon and K2 give potential for somebody to have psychosis, because the mind and emotions and the way of thinking is void and taken away, and it's detached. So the emotions are detached from, and that's just a potential. That means Rahu would then be in Gemini, which is okay. I get it. Okay. Yeah. The 11th then. That's where it would be. Okay. And Rahu is the shadow of Saturn, and Ketu is the shadow of Mars. Rahu co-rules the sign of Aquarius with Uranus and Saturn, while Ketu co-rules the sign of Scorpio with Mars, Pluto, and Lilith. Oh, and the 6th. Okay, so then Ketu would be in the 12th. And now probably the one that everybody's waiting for. Black Moon Lilith. Of course. I mean, I don't blame you guys for thinking that's the best one, because technically it is, if you know and understand her. Where do I start? Okay. Black Moon Lilith. The best way to describe Black Moon Lilith is unknown. And just like the divine figure with Lilith, you have no idea what she's going to do. She is the unknown, the dark. But she's also where one's true empowerment lies in. It also shows how someone can seduce others, allure others, and actually use their talents to manipulate people or somebody else to pushing and helping them gain their empowerment or desire or what they're going for. And Lilith is also, you can see how somebody gets and carries out their acts of vengeance, and depending on the sign. Lilith is also an indication of a cult. It's also the indication of how one. Let's see. How do you put that? This also shows how one pretty much gets afflicted by trauma. There's a lot that I don't know. There is so much I don't know. And that's just how it's going to be for the rest of my life. Because I don't want to know everything, because it's like, okay, why am I still here? I don't want to know everything. But I mean, if I know it, okay. If I don't, I'll say it. But with Lilith, you can see how somebody carries out acts of vengeance. Say, for example, if you have Lilith in her natural sign of Scorpio, you can kind of see that somebody can carry out acts of vengeance with sudden events. Even also with a cult. Meaning that somebody gets vengeance by doing black magic, or occult means to influence the life of somebody else that they're kind of not the best terms with. And you can also see potentially where somebody has a deep traumatic wound based on her placement. Like, for an example, say if you have Lilith in the 7th house, where she's really pissed off because now you're putting Lilith in a house where she has to find her empowerment through another person. To her, that's like, why do I have to rely on this one to be empowered? Really? You know how stupid that sounds? My empowerment comes from this. No. No. So she gets frustrated there. But at the same time, that placement though, somebody can be a very good manipulator. Because the way that somebody manipulates and seduces others is by manipulating people. So they can actually manipulate people to manipulate somebody else. It's like pretty much like a puppeteer. Okay, so funny enough too, with Rahu and Ketu, Lilith also makes them do what she wants, believe it or not. So essentially in the 3rd house, that's your communications and writing, friends and neighbors, short distance travel. Putting Lilith and Rahu in there, well, essentially, it also being Virgo, essentially the way that you communicate is in a way, and also some of your friends may actually communicate with you in a way that is somewhat feeling a little bit like overly nitpicky, but at the same time, the way you give vengeance is by you go towards somebody who, let's just say, they try and push their moral ethics onto you. But the way that you respond back to it is that you get vengeance by completely tearing them to shreds and giving them a harsh talking to about saying like, look, this is what I believe in, that's what you believe in. Do what your religion says and stop bothering mine. You don't like it? Well, too bad, hon. Go away. Why don't you go and just, take care of yourself, because you're not really doing so good in this area. I mean, look, you're even neglecting your child. Why do you have to worry about me? Take care of your kid, dude. And it's very, best way to put it is like very ankle bite. It's like an ankle biter. I don't know why it came out like that, but like something that just chomps and keeps chomping, kind of like a piranha. The best way to put it. And if you have a younger sibling, potentially that can also be another indication that your sibling may actually have those qualities, because it's from your perspective and that's what you're seeing. They can be someone who criticizes and critiques and nitpicks, and also gets their vengeance done by overkilling whoever they're nitpicking, if that makes sense. And they also may use kind of very dark words in communication. And the way they go about it, it can be very traumatic to whoever they're chomping on, metaphorically. Let's see what else. Love can't be retrograde. Yeah, but it takes. Usually, once you know how a planet behaves and you know all the signs, know all the houses, and once you actually go one by each placement and actually understand it, it's like you're. It's kind of like you're building like making a recipe, but you have no idea what each one does. Pretty much now you're taking that and now you're going to be swapping out Rahu with Mars. Lilith does not like Mars because Mars thinks he's like the masculine macho man, and Lilith is over on the other side looking at him like, oh, look at those muscles. You think you think you can bench this? Hey, you have an anger problem, dude. That's not impressive. No, you're not going to tell me what to do. In fact, here, come here. You're going to do what I want you to do instead, because that's how Lilith can actually interact with Mars. Mars doesn't know how to, logically reason. So he's a lot easier to take control over with Lilith. And with seduction, that's also what she has an excel point with. Mars is easy to seduce and manipulate. So in the third house, you can actually see the way that one communicates can be in a way that has a lot of energy, but also has a very, very dangerous way of seducing people. So essentially, one can communicate with enough energy to actually hook someone. Meaning, like, if you're trying to get someone's attention and actually have them listen, you know exactly how to go and get the hook in. Just by the tone and how much energy and how driven you are, you can actually hook someone and actually get control of them if you're exerted just right. But you have to be observant of that. That's how powerful that can be. And also, since the third house is your hands and your arms and also your lungs, you can actually see a lot of energy with the hands, but also the best way to seduce or allure somebody is a lot of movement with the hands. Like, say, for an example, if you, I don't know why light show came up, but if you, wow, this can pretty much say a lot. Like those gloves that have like the lights in them that you just turn on in the glove, and they're gloves with lights. If you were to do something like that, you can instantly entrance someone by just doing stuff like that with the lights. You can entrance someone like without any effort because that's just natural and that's just what it comes with. Third house is your hands, and you're manipulating your hands and moving your hands. Lilith is seduction, and Mars is energy. And believe it or not, moving your hands in a way that's very flowy, that's a very intoxicating, entrancing, seductive way. That's what that's what happens when you put all this stuff together. It can get pretty like, You just gotta know how to link it together and get it all tied together. And also, usually people that have an Aquarius moon, Aquarius ascendant, or have Aquarius placements, they're actually able to take astrology and actually work with it because Aquarius is all over the place. It's the most chaotic sign, yes, but it's also the one that can actually understand stuff that makes people go, what? I don't get it. Aquarius goes all. It's funny you say Achilles heel because that's, yeah. It's funny you say Achilles heel because, funny enough, that's actually one of the muscles, the Achilles tendon. That's one of the muscles I had. What's that called? Essentially, avulged from my heel, and avulged means it came detached from my heel when I broke my heel, or calcaneus fracture. Yeah, that. Ow. And I'm going to say that was quite the experience. But, yeah. And I think I covered all the planets. Yeah, that I'm going to cover. I'm not going to do the asteroids as of now. And I think that's pretty much all of them. And now we're in 30 minutes. Okay, it wasn't too bad this time. So I guess it'll be right now open floor for whatever questions come up. And if you actually want me to like dissect placement, just let me know by saying what your ascendant is, where it's at, and the whatnot. Jupiter retrograde. Essentially, you're having somebody's wisdom, their teaching, and their philosophy. It becomes closer to Earth, so their philosophical thoughts, they actually become so fixated and so strict about it that it can be very crippling. Oh, okay, Scorpio, so do that one next. So say if you have Jupiter retrograde in the ascendant, somebody's intelligence and wisdom, it can show that somebody thinks that they know everything and they defy and they push back the wisdom of the elders and their teachers, and they become they question a lot. That's not a bad thing, but they tend to not believe those who have the wisdom. They don't go along with it. They actually nitpick it and they challenge it. It's not a bad thing, but that's just one of the potentials that can happen. But it all depends on the house placement, sign placement, and how Jupiter is being affected. Chiron is an asteroid, and I don't have enough confidence with that. But now Scorpio. Scorpio represents the following. Devotion, commitment, assassinations, like assassinating someone, occult, crystals and gemstones, stuff that's hidden underground, scandals, gambling, hey Jeremy, lottery, walking down the street, minding your own business, then out of nowhere to the right comes out a walrus and just slaps you in the face and then just waddles off. Then you're confused, like, what just happened? Then an anvil falls on your head. Sudden events. That's Scorpio. Scorpio is also the sign related to surgery. Psychological work, deep, dark psychological work. It also represents pretty much deeper psychological issues. It represents depression. It can represent depression, but also at the same time, it's fixated water. And depending on how that water is, that water takes that on. So if you have, say, like for example, Scorpio, a Venus in Scorpio, you can see that somebody, when it comes to their love and relationships, talk about devoted. To the point where it's like, it creeping me out, girl. But also it can be the other way around with like somebody's love and emotions and commitment can be obsessive, because Scorpio is obsession and being fixated on it. But also somebody expresses their love by means of occultic means, magic, stuff like that. And also somebody finds beauty in occult sciences and witchcraft. And no, somebody doesn't find beauty in assassinating someone. No. Don't put it that way. That's no. And don't think that, Venus and Scorpio, somebody's lover is somebody who likes taking out people. No. But also relationships to them will be very transformative. Like they'll be a big part of their transformation and whatnot. If that gives you a really good idea. Because funny enough, Scorpio is, of all the signs, the most committed and devoted out of all the signs, because they're fixed water. But also Pisces is the deepest water, so that's also devotion. But Scorpio is the fixed devotion, while Pisces can actually go into the depths of it and flow with it. Yes. Oh no, I haven't even spoke about Capricorn because we're actually in the current part of like the stream that's open for. So, and essentially, I'll keep going for another. I'll really have to see like the chart in order to make a verdict on that, because I mean that's a lot. That's a lot of Scorpio. And I mean, believe it or not, astrology, if you know how to do it, you can actually see so many things. You can even use astrology to kind of have your house be set up a certain way, because there's actually, I can't remember what chart is that called in the like the divisional charts. I think it's either the D4. I think it's the D4. I think it's D4. And I gave a pretty good analysis for other than Capricorn. I mean, if you remember that, and you stop. Oh yeah, I think it's the D4 that you can actually look to, not D2, D4. And then from the D4, you see how somebody's home should be laid out, for example. Like depending on what the ascendant is, like for example, say if you have an Aries ascendant in your D4, your house should be something along the lines of the color red, or it should be a very, very active home, or there's a lot of youthful, but also a lot of initiative and a lot of energy in the home. It looks like it has energy in it. But say, great, now I'm going to be tying my head up and I'm going to tell it to stop. Ugh. But oi. And this is also pretty much using all that I've learned. Because actually, I really first really started getting into astrology back in December of 2017. Pretty much ever since that, my first day being, I don't want to say exposed to it, but the first time I was looking at it for my mentor Russell, I got my chart drawn, and then he was starting to teach me with it. I then just became hooked. Like I just kept going into it. I just kept swimming into it more and more, deeper, up until present day, daily, non-stop. Ugh. But I know that well, he knows now anyway. But still, at first, I made it look like I was only learning Western with him, but I was also learning Vedic on the side too. So I was learning both systems at the same time, and it's yeah. And again, daily. Like some days I would just be looking up placements and just learning it like easily more than 8 hours a day. Just kept looking, rereading, watching content about it, just going over it over and over and over and over again. To the point where somebody's like, do you ever do anything else besides just keep looking at your phone? Just kept going and going and going. And then that's like when I also got these. That's about 2 of them. To certificates of merit, and these ones are for and hey, you know what, that's also kind of showing her that you're disciplined and having a lot of focus and control, and you're showing that you're able to put in the work and study and be consistent. That's also Capricorn. So that's a really good thing that you've proven to her. Just remember, whenever you're approaching a Lilith, like a piece of art that's of Lilith, like a statue or even a picture that you print out that's of her, or even her symbol, if you get on like one knee, like if you're being knighted, for example, that's going to activate your Lilith because you're activating your knees, and she's in Capricorn, which represents the knees. You get on one knee, that's going to be a huge plus to her because you're activating her placement in Capricorn, which is the knees. That's going to help you substantially. But these are certificates of merit. You mean the planet Venus? I actually have that. It shows that one, the way they express their love is pretty devoted, fixed, and they also, by occult means, also help protect and support that love bond. And through occult means, they also express themselves by occult. Their creative self-expression comes from occult science. But anyway, these are 2 certificates of merit about synastry, relationship astrology, and the Kupta system, like, matchmaking over in India. Yeah, these 2 are for that. Ugh. My hand's falling asleep. And then I'm going to grab my other one, which is all the way over there because for some odd reason these ones, actually, no, that one wouldn't fit back here, so I'm going to go grab it. Hold on. This beautiful thing. Out we go. And to be technical, you don't really need to have like a certificate of merit or that was rude. You just knocked over my Coke can and there was nothing in it. So you can pick it up, dude. Anyway. And this one's a certificate of excellence. And yes, this was from Magavedic Astrology Academy from Keparaj or KRS. Yeah. This was from his school. And funny enough, when I took his course, I kind of finished it in 3 weeks. Because about 80% of the material I already knew. So it was just like, okay, this may take a while for you to, get through. Well, 263 lessons, I think. Yeah. It took me 3 weeks. But then again, you got to keep in mind, a good chunk I already knew. Yep. Yes, motion. Definitely. But this, yeah, I got in 3 weeks when it should, on average, taken somebody about some time because the quizzes on there that he has, you have to get a certain score, and sometimes you have to get all of them right in order to get through. And when it gets into like nakshatra placements and aspects and all that stuff, it can make somebody go bonkers. And you have to have the right frame of mind in order to do this art. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of dedication, and it's, in all honesty, astrology is a science because essentially if you have like how arithmetic and mathematics and calculations and anything involving numbers, I mean, arithmetic is the study of numbers, which is a science. Astrology needs arithmetic because you've got to calculate degrees. You have to be able to see like a certain degree placement. You have to be able to do geometry to draw it. You have to know like a certain number, like the degrees by a certain number, point, your decimals and all that. And especially if you're going to be doing on the Vedic side, or if you're going to be really fancy like I am, you actually do a, what's that called? You do a composite chart. That's when you find the midpoint between 2 charts and you put them on top of one another. But for that chart to come, you need to have 2 charts of 2 people and pretty much find the midpoint between them. But now say if you're going to be fancy like with me and take it another step further, you take your composite chart with those two people, and now you make that into divisional charts, which takes a long time to do. Because really, composite chart is pretty much the bond between you and another person. When you make a divisional chart out of that, like say for example the Navamsha D9, essentially the relationship, the marriage, like if the marriage of these two happens, a D9 of that will show you a lot about that between these two if it's a marriage, and the second half of life if it's going to last that long. You can see how it's going to progress that way. Same thing with the D10. What kind of, well, between two people, if they work together, what's their work output by the D10? How strong is their act of service with the D10? And also even the D4. How are they going to be? How is their home life going to be with these two? That's how really deep you can get into this. And in order for you to see and divide a chart, you have to divide a chart by how many times? Like the D2, you cut it in half. But there's many ways of doing that. Like even if you really want to be crazy, you can do this. You can do the Sestiamsha, which is the D60 chart. You divide the chart 60 times. So you take your midpoint composite, divide it 60 times. That's like the final say of this couple. That's intense. And even the thought of that, I haven't done that. I haven't gotten that far, but oi, that would be quite the headache. But if you want to go that deep, you can. And that's actually incorporating both systems together. And I mean, that's how deep you can go. And funny enough, mathematics and arithmetic is like my sworn enemy. I don't want to know how to find this guy's x. Why do I need to do that? And that was an algebra joke. Because you're always trying to find the x, and I don't know why. Is always x, just y. Yeah, because usually those are the two variables that are in the place of the unknown number. I was more of an English person and a literature and writing kind of a person. Hey, Tyler. Right now it's open floor, but I mean, I'm really just going on about like talking about how in-depth with astrology you can get. Like, I haven't seen people make a composite chart, the midpoint chart between two people, and then actually make divisional charts from the Vedic side of that midpoint chart, which that can get pretty crazy. And if you really want to be extra cray-cray, what you can even also do, believe it or not, you can actually take the composite chart, pretty much break it down into, let's say, like say if you want to see somebody's viewpoint of how they're going to feel when they're married with this other person with the composite chart, you do a D9 of that composite chart, and now you synergize that new D9 composite chart with this person's birth chart. You'll be actually able to see, okay, how's this person going to feel about the marriage between them and this person? I put that over the top of it. You can actually see how they're going to react to it before you even say, you mine, and ring it. That sounded like a lot right there. It's just like, what? You know, that's how cray you really can get with this, and it can get mind-boggling. That's why you need to have an Aquarius moon or an Aquarius ascendant or Aquarius strong, so that way it's like, and the thing is, the best way to describe that, Munjin, is when astrology, depending on like the systems with Vedic and Western, because Western yielded from Vedic first, because It was used to predict weather and see, animals' mating season. From that, you can actually see that either way, the placements and how it's spoken of, it's somewhat the same. It's just that putting it in a different perspective, if that makes sense. Their nature is said one way, while their karmic cycle is expressed another. It can kind of sometimes intertwine, sometimes, and it may be slightly off or slightly on, but still, it's astrology and is one of those things that sometimes you really have to take a look and really dissect to see what's going on. And yes, depending on birthplace, sometimes can influence that too, sometimes, based on the system. And composite is actually similar to synastry, yes. And in fact, you need to be able to do a synastry of two separate charts already to do composite, because in order to do synastry, you need two charts. And from those two charts, you get composite, the midpoint between the two. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I can also see another question coming up saying, but what about like a relationship between three people? Good luck with that one, because that one, I don't know. Like, I mean, what you could do, even though to be technical, this is not really the best way. What you can do, you can make a composite chart between the two people, and then you can actually take that other person's birth chart, put it on top of that. That's like the closest you can get with that. How do these two people feel about this one person? And how does this one person feel about these two being together? That even made my brain go like, what? And yes. Composite is relationship as you and somebody else as a one unit. The ascendant of the relationship between you and the other person, that would be yes, that would be the lagna. That's like the image and the thoughts going on between both your heads, essentially. That's how you're being projecting out to the verb between two. Yes. And the moon is what, for the couple, where the two feel the most secure and how they emotionally connect to one another, if that makes sense. And depending on where it's placed. But now say if you have like the moon and the ascendant, you can actually see this couple pretty much being emotionally connected to each other. And the world can see that, wow, these two are emotional as heck. They always go up and down. And they're like, oh boy, was it this time? Wow, overkill. Now they're yeah. And I know, because between mine and me, we have our moon in the ascendant of, what was it? Was it I can't remember the sign, but yeah, it's like whew. What happens when the degree of their moon is the same. So essentially their moon is on top of the other person's moon, and it's the same sign. In that case, their emotional, like say, like in the synastry or composite, because composite is going to change it, because degree points, you have to find the midpoint between the two charts, and that can be a bit. I might need clarity on that one. A Scorpio and a Pisces, they're both water, but Pisces is more immutable and more easy to kind of like sway, but still depending on which degree of Pisces it is. If it's more in the middle, like the more in the middle Pisces get, the more it's like really Piscean. If it's closer to Aquarius, it's going to act a little bit more, what in the world? But if it's more towards Aries, this Pisces is going to be more Aries in terms of their energy. But with Scorpio, I mean, and Pisces together, those two are like, I'll put it this way. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, those are your moksha signs. The signs that pretty much give you liberation. Mother, one of the karmic signs, and Pisces, escapism. Those ones give you liberation. So if that makes sense. But Scorpio deals with the harshness of it. Pisces is able to escape it, while Cancer pretty much nurtures the heart. Ugh. My diffuser just kicked the bucket. I'm going to bring it back to life. Oh, I didn't even feel it. There we go. Oh. Ugh. And I don't even think I didn't even speak about nakshatras at all. But I mean that's going to be much deeper. And I mean, if you really want to get really deep into this, you can actually. No, I'm not going to even get into that because that would make all your head spin. Like, but how does this planet now get influenced by this planet in this degree by 2 planets? Yeah, it gets crazy. Like I said, you really need to have an Aquarius head, moon, with a lot of Aquarius placements to be able to keep up and understand, okay, that does this, now it goes like this, then that, and that. Yeah, Aquarius is all over the place. The most chaotic and whimsical and whimsy sign of them all. But it can be also the one that actually really helps progress and understand the stuff that makes people go, huh? And you also conspiracy theories. Yeah, that's also Aquarius. Um, uh, maybe. Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to end the stream here because I have something I need to talk and address because it's kind of serious. So, anyway, this is the end of the stream, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on the next topic.